The Philadelphia Eagles finished the 2023 season with an 11-6 record and made the playoffs for the 6th time in 7 years. It was the definition of an up-and-down season, as the Eagles started out with a 10-1 record through 11 games, which included wins over the Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, Rams, and Dolphins, before falling 42-19 to the 49ers in a Week 13 game at the Link, in what would be a sign of things to come. The Eagles' final win during the 2023 season would come on Christmas Day over the Giants, and a few weeks later, their season would finally come to an end when they would go on to lose in the wildcard round of the playoffs to the Bucs with a score of 32-9. A little while after that, future Hall of Famer Jason Kelce announced his retirement, and the end of the 2023 Eagles season is best forgotten. But in the offseason, they hired new offensive coordinator Kellen Moore and veteran defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, replacing previous coordinators Brian Johnson and Sean Desai. And per usual, Howie Roseman had himself an offseason as he brought in loads of talent on both sides of the football. And even though the Eagles lost some pieces this offseason, like Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox to retirement, and like DeAndre Swift in free agency, I think they're going to be an incredibly fun unit to watch this year. And the Philadelphia Eagles are back. But how far can they go? Well, we're going to break everything down in today's video. With football being back, it should not come as a surprise that I really enjoy attending live games, whether it's college or the NFL, and one game in particular I attended last year was Penn State at Maryland, and I really enjoyed going to that game because it gave me an in-person look at future first-round pick, now Jets left tackle, Olu Fashanu, and all of this would not have been possible without the Game Time app. For this year's Maryland-Penn State game, I can find prices as low as $22 per seat in the upper deck, but there's one super deal right now on the Game Time app where I can find seats as low as $44 just 2 rows off the field, and that's one of my favorite features on the Game Time app, is the super deal. That deal in particular is in the top 1% of all deals, and the super deal lets you know how good of a deal you're getting, whether it's in the top 1%, the top 5%, or the top 10%, and it makes ticket buying even easier than before. That, along with being able to see what my seats look like before I get to the stadium, are my 2 favorite features in the Game Time app. So download Game Time, create an account, and use promo code ANALYSIS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and again, that's promo code ANALYSIS, ANALYSIS, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. And we are starting today's video by breaking down who the Eagles lost in free agency and who they brought in free agency. As mentioned during the intro, they lost running back DeAndre Swift as he signed a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Bears this offseason. Swift had a really solid year for the Birds last year as he ran for over 1,000 yards and had over 1,250 total yards on the season. And despite how good the Eagles' offensive line is, replacing DeAndre Swift was not going to be easy. But the Eagles signed former Giants running back Saquon Barkley to a 3-year, $37 million deal with 26 of it being guaranteed. I like the signing a lot for the Eagles, and we often talk about quarterbacks being set up to succeed, and Jalen Hurts is absolutely set up to succeed with a great offensive line and 3 great options to throw the football to in A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert. But Saquon has never really been set up for success during his time as an NFL running back. He was drafted number 2 overall back in 2018, and it was pretty much, look, go figure it out. You were an All-American at Penn State, and we need you to perform miracles. And you're not going to win a lot of games like that, and you can also make the case, and a completely valid case, by the way, that even for as good as Saquon is at times, he should have never been selected at number 2 overall. I've said before, I'm not a big fan of paying free agent running backs top dollar, especially a top back like Saquon, who has nearly 1,500 career touches, and a guy who will turn 28 in February. But I like the signing because even in the worst case, Philly can get out of the contract after next year, so it's not the end of the world. I also think the Eagles are going to put him in favorable situations, and that they're not going to basically say, all right, buddy, go save our franchise. Now, they also signed pass rusher Bryce Huff, who previously played for the Jets, and this was a signing I liked a lot as well. Bryce Huff was an undrafted free agent out of Memphis during the 2020 draft process, and he's a guy who went from being a good guy to have in a NASCAR package to a player who legitimately disrupts football games. And in 2023 alone, he had 67 pressures on just 334 pass rushing snaps along with 10 sacks. He is absolutely worth the 3-year, $51 million contract they gave him, and again, even if it doesn't work out, they only gave him 34 of the 51 guaranteed, so the Birds are protected and would be out of the deal at the end of the 2025 season if worse comes to worse. They also brought back fan favorite CJ Gardner-Johnson, and Birds fans obviously know all about CJ, and from a playstyle standpoint and a personality standpoint, I think CJ is a very good fit in the city of Philadelphia, and he is a player this city and this franchise loves. They also brought in linebacker Devin White, and Devin has had some good moments, and he has especially had good plays throughout his career. But the player he is on a down-to-down basis is not great, and there's a reason the Bucs were willing to part ways, and there's a reason the Eagles gave him an incentive-based contract. White had a great 2020 season, which was the year they won the Super Bowl, but Devin routinely takes wrong angles, and he misses more tackles than you would like, and is a very frustrating player at times. And that is one concern I have with the 2024 Eagles, is their linebacking play. Well, that and the secondary. Now, for the rest of the Eagles' defense, this was a unit that vastly underperformed last year, and a unit that was nowhere close to as bad as the results showed. They allowed 400 or more yards of opposing offense in their final 2 regular season games, and in the wildcard round against the Bucs, and it was a disaster on tape. The Cardinals game in particular was bad, as they allowed a team to go into the Link and put up 35 points and run for over 200 yards. There were countless examples of the Eagles being out of place and the defense being completely out of sync, and it showed. And there was a reason this team finished 30th in points allowed per game, and there was also a reason that despite finishing 11-6, that they only had a point difference of 5 points despite finishing 5 games above 500. Now, will Vic Fangio make everything better overnight, and will he turn this unit into the 2000 Ravens? No. But with how much I expect the Eagles to dominate offensively and to be able to control the clock in most of their games, I can't imagine this defense isn't serviceable in 2024. And that's the big thing, is this defense does not have to be top 3 or top 5 or whatever, it simply has to be serviceable. And out of the 18 games they played last year, including the playoff game within this of course, they allowed 30 or more points in 7 games, and a lot of that can be attributed to the pass defense, as they finished 32nd in passing attempts against, 31st in passing yards allowed, and 31st in passing touchdowns allowed, and there was a reason for that. Teams knew what they could get away with against this team, and they knew the secondary was not good. James Bradberry is a great example of what I mean when I compare corners to running backs in terms of how they age. Bradberry had a really good 2022 season and was a second-team All-Pro, but he entered the 2023 season at 30 years old, and his hips did not flip the same, and he was unable to play at the same level he had been playing at just 365 days prior. Teams were eager to test Bradberry in coverage, and when you have a corner that's not playing well and everyone knows it, it's a long season and there's only so much the pass rush can do. And this was a big reason why I loved the Quinyon Mitchell selection as much as I did, and even the Cooper DeJean pick after, which we'll break down during the rookie impact part of the video. Darius Slay has been a good player in the NFL for a long time, and he too showed some moments during the 2023 season, and I would expect him to regress further in 2024, as he is now a 33-year-old corner, and because he was born on New Year's Day, he will turn 34 towards the end of the season. What all of this means for the Eagles' defensive success this year is they're going to need a breakout year from Jalen Carter, who certainly showed flashes during his rookie year, and they're going to need Josh Sweat to continue to be the player he has been over the past few years, and of course, the Bryce Huff signing to be worth it. Obviously, when you think of the Birds, you probably think of Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Smitty, maybe even Nick Sirianni, but Josh Sweat has been a really good player over the past few years and has developed into a player you can't ignore. He's had at least 40 pressures in each of the last 3 seasons, with a career-high 68 in 2023, and getting to the quarterback for this defense is going to be critical because of the concerns I have with this secondary. Now, while I think the Eagles' defense isn't as talented as their offense, and nobody does to be fair, I don't think they're even close to the 3rd worst defense in the NFL. And that's the bottom line with the 2024 Eagles defense. You don't have to be top 3, top 5, or top whatever, just do not, like you were last year, be a net negative. And if they're not a net negative, then they're going to win a lot of games, and in fact, I'd be surprised if they don't win the NFC East as long as the defense is serviceable. For the 2024 Eagles offense, it's hard to imagine that it gets worse because there were a few things last year that were incredibly frustrating for how talented of a unit this was. And for how talented of a unit this was, I thought the coaching did an extreme disservice to really every player on this offense. And with Saquon Barkley now as the running back, I think we're going to see a big difference in terms of how this offense calls plays moving forward. Not just because Saquon is that much superior of a running back to DeAndre Swift, but his play style is vastly different to DeAndre Swift's. And what Saquon does, and why Saquon is a really good player, or at least you see the highlight reel plays from Saquon, is Saquon's runs are predicated on breakaway runs, or runs that are designated 15 yards or more. So the Eagles' run game last year was a lot of inside zone, and inside zone isn't a bad concept by any means. It is the main purpose of inside zone is to, let's just, push forward, get 4 to 6 yards, and shorten 2nd and 5, have it be 3rd and 1, whatever the case may be, right? But Saquon's game is, let's bounce it outside, let's try and make a 3-yard play into a 30-yard play, and obviously during his time in New York, that bit him in the rear end, because the defense would focus on Saquon, and they would invite that, knowing what the outcome would be, which would be him to bounce it outside, and then the cavalry would come, and then Saquon, instead of having a 3-yard play turn into a 30-yard play, it would be either 3 turn into, 4, or even maybe turn it into 2 or 1, because he would try and bounce out with nothing there. But with the Eagles offense, and with Arthur Juan, with Devontae Smith, with Dallas Goedert, with Jalen, of course, being able to run the football, a lot of that is going to only help Saquon out, and in theory, I think we can see the best year of Saquon's career since his rookie season back in 2018. And how all of this comes together full circle for the Eagles offense is it should run a lot smoother, and I don't think Kellen Moore is going to be, have his head stuck in the sand and it's going to be my way or the highway at times like it was for the Eagles last year. I mean, this offense, for them, with how much talent they have literally everywhere, I mean, this is not an exaggeration to say that the Eagles have 8 Pro Bowlers on their offense in terms of where they are at their position. For them not to be top 3 or 4 in points per game and top 3 or 4 in yards is a disservice. Now, Jason Kelce retiring is noteworthy, obviously, because he is a future Hall of Famer. I mean, 5 years from now, he will be getting inducted into Canton for the class of 2029. But that's one concern I have with this team is Mekhi Becton at right guard. Given how big Mekhi is, he's 6'7", 360. That's a very, very big boy, and that is, in my opinion, too big to be a guard. I think he should be a tackle, but Mekhi has struggled at the NFL level, and that is the only real concern I have with the 2024 Eagles offense. But from a statistical standpoint, I think Jalen should be closer to the player he was in 2022 from an efficiency standpoint, and I don't think he's going to throw 15 interceptions again like he did last year. The passing yards are always going to be tricky for Jalen because of how much he runs the football and because of how much of a weapon he is himself. So I think he'll be around 3,900 yards, right around 24 or 25 touchdowns, and probably be around 500 or 600 rushing yards with around double-digit touchdowns. And that's going to be the tricky thing for the Eagles this year, or not tricky thing, but the disadvantage for Saquon Barkley is if he gets down at the 1, I mean, everybody in the world knows what play is coming, and that's obviously going to be a point where Jalen takes, rushing touchdowns from Saquon. But I would expect A.J. Brown to be another 1,300-yard player. He's been over 1,400 in each of the past 2 years, and he's one of the best receivers in the NFL for a reason. Kellen Moore knows how to utilize his weapons. Now, I do expect there to be a big difference between what Brian Johnson was last year and what Kellen Moore will be this year, but I don't want the expectation for Kellen Moore to be, well, he is an improvement and he has to be perfect, because Kellen, nor Andy Reid, nor Kyle Shanahan, nor Sean McVay are perfect. Nobody is perfect. So it's going to be an improvement. It's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows, but the Eagles offense, as long as, things go according to plan, this offense should without a doubt be a top 5 scoring unit this year. I mean, they have playmakers everywhere. For the Eagles' 2024 draft class, I thought GM Howie Roseman did a good job of addressing both current needs while also taking guys on day 2 and day 3 to be development pieces and to eventually contribute in 2025 and beyond. And it started with the selection of Toledo corner Quinyon Mitchell. I, like everyone, liked Quinyon a lot throughout the draft process, and I don't worry about him being able to go from the MAC to the NFL and that it's going to be too big of a transition for him. Now, I will say that Quinyon is going to probably get beat a couple of times throughout his rookie year, as it happens with everybody. But what I will say from a progression standpoint and how he, goes along throughout his career, he is in the same room as Darius Slay and James Bradberry as a rookie. And the knowledge those two are going to be able to pass down and just tricks of the trade that they're going to be able to share with him is going to be incredible for him as a young player. And I think Quinyon will be a really good player over the next 4 or 5 years. And that situation kind of reminds me of what Rome Odunze of the Bears is going through with DJ Moore and with Keenan Allen, except on the defensive side of the ball, obviously with Big Play Slay and James Bradberry. Now, Cooper DeJean was a selection I liked a lot, and I know the Eagles had to give up quite a bit to go get him, but I think it'll be worth it. I really wanted to say that he's crafty and that he's a lunch pail guy. He may be a lunch pail guy given that he's from Iowa, but look, I like Cooper a lot, and when you're able to walk out of a draft with both Quinyon and Cooper DeJean, I mean, that's a tremendous haul for any team to begin with. And I was kind of surprised the Eagles got Quinyon where they did. I thought he was going to go off the board much earlier, but when those are your first 2 picks, and then you still have a lot of other players in this class, like Jalix Hunt, who I thought was a tremendous selection for the Eagles, a guy who will be a rotational rusher early, and a guy who I think can follow a career path like a Josh Sweat, where he was a 4th-round pick back in 2018, and now he's been a very contributive player over the past few years. This was a great draft class all around. Now, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is a prospect I liked for what he was as a prospect. I don't think Trotter is going to be, I mean, it's not fair to comp him to his dad, but I still think he can be a solid player and a guy that can come in and he can be a situational player. And I like that, the idea of Jeremiah Trotter Jr. in this defense, but I wouldn't expect all that much necessarily in year 1, but I think he falls into the development category. And again, I think there was a reason the Eagles only gave Devin White a 1-year deal. So Howie absolutely knows what he's doing, and the Trotter Jr. selection could just very well be a case of that. Now, one other player that I liked a lot the Eagles took was wide receiver Johnny Wilson. Johnny Wilson was 6'7", 235, wide receiver, by the way, not tight end, and separation is always going to be a thing when you're that big as a receiver, especially with corners in your hip pocket, but I like the idea of Johnny Wilson while being on the field at the same time with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and of course, Jalen, Saquon, and Dallas Goedert. Or I guess the question would be, will he turn into anything at the NFL level consistently? Probably not, but I like the idea of him, and especially as a red zone blocker and a guy that can, if you run 11 personnel with 1 running back and 1 tight end, and then of course 3 receivers, if you can have him in the red zone, kind of be out wide and just completely take a corner out of a play, because he's going to be 30 pounds heavier than most every corner he faces. That's a great piece to have in the red zone at any given time. So, like the situational players the Eagles drafted, while also getting, production in 2024 from both Quinyon and Cooper DeJean. Overall, I really, really like this draft class. The The 2024 Eagles schedule definitely has some challenges, but it's not the worst schedule ever made, all things considered. Their first 2 games are on the more difficult end, as they go to Brazil to play the Packers in week 1, then come home to play the Falcons at the Link in week 2 on Monday night. But after that, they go to New Orleans and go to Tampa before their week 5 bye. Now, just being honest, for those first 4 games, I don't think it's unreasonable to say the Eagles can start out 4-0. Will they, of course, is something else. But none of those teams are for sure 100% going to beat the Eagles. Now, Philly's obviously not going to go 17-0, nor is any team, at least left hand up. If a team does go 17-0, I will admit I was wrong, but I don't think they're going to go 17-0, and they do have a difficult stretch in the middle of the year where they go to Cincinnati, then come home to play Jacksonville, and then go to Dallas in a 3-week span, and then after the Dallas game, they play Washington on Thursday night, so that's not going to be easy, but when you look at this schedule, I really think Philly can win 12 games. Now, going to Cincinnati and going to Baltimore are absolutely brutal games. Let's just call that what it is. And they even go to SoFi to play the Rams this year. But how many of those games do you look at before it starts and say the Eagles are outmatched, they are not as talented as the other team, and let's just go ahead and chalk this up as a loss? You know, this is not the Carolina Panthers going into Kansas City to play the Chiefs in whatever week. It's not going to be that type of game for the Eagles in any week. And with this team, you can legitimately convince yourself that, well, if this goes right and that goes right, you can convince yourself that they're going to win 14 games. Will they? I don't think so, but I think they're going to win at least 12 games, and my prediction for this team is, well, not this isn't a prediction, but I think they are a better team than Dallas, and my prediction is that the Eagles are going to take back the NFC East and win the division this year. So, the team ceiling that I have for the Eagles, honestly, they can win the Super Bowl. For me, it's a 3-team race at the top of the NFC. I think it is the 49ers, Lions, and Eagles. And I think the Eagles are being a little slept on entering the 2024 season based on how their season ended. But for the team ceiling this year, they can win the Super Bowl. They got really close a couple of years ago, and I think they're going to be improved from where they were last year, and that's a team that still won 11 games. So I think with the improvements this team made, they can win 11, maybe 12 games this year, win the division, and we'll see how the seedings play out from there. But I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe as we close in on 150k subs, and I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. If you like this, please check out the Football Analysis Podcast. The link is in the description, and I will see you next time. Love you guys.